The July sun blazed down over Camp Resolute, a U.S. Marine Corps base nestled in the high desert of Arizona. On that rare public access day, civilians had been invited behind the gates to witness the ceremonial drill of Echo Company, an elite unit known for its flawless precision, steeped in tradition, yet forged in combat. Staff Sergeant James Monroe stood perfectly still on the edge of the parade ground, his dress blues immaculate, his posture immovable. From afar, he was indistinguishable from any other Marine locked in ceremonial formation. But inside, his senses were anything but still. A veteran of 2 tours in Afghanistan, Monroe had learned to read the battlefield in the slightest details, a twitch of a finger, a look that lingered too long, the tightness in someone's shoulders. That awareness never left him, not even during these peacetime rituals. Civilians lined the outer perimeter, snapping photos of Marines performing rifle spins and synchronized marches. Children clutched mini flags. Vendors sold shaved ice. At first glance, it was a picture of American pride. But Monroe's gaze had locked onto something that didn't belong in the picture. A man in an expensive polo shirt stood among the crowd, one arm draped possessively over the shoulder of a little girl, 8, maybe 9 years old. Her eyes weren't curious or excited like the other kids. They were watchful, hollow, afraid. She wore a long-sleeved hoodie, despite the triple-digit heat, and every time the man adjusted his grip, her body tensed. Monroe noticed the way she flinched beneath his hand. The man leaned in, whispering something sharp that made the girl look at her shoes. When a passing tourist cheerfully asked, "Excited to see the Marines, sweetheart?" the man cut in smoothly. "She's shy, aren't you, Emily?" The girl gave a slow nod, almost robotic. And to Monroe, that pause, so brief it would be invisible to most, was the kind of silence that screams. His instincts surged. Something wasn't right. He watched as the man guided the girl through the crowd, always keeping one hand on her. Always in control. When the girl's sleeve shifted as she was hoisted up for a better view, Monroe saw the faint outline of bruises, small fingerprints, some old, some new. Still, he remained silent. A U.S. Marine does not break ceremonial formation without direct cause. Not even for a shout, not even for a scream. But then it happened. In the middle of a lull between drills, the girl glanced back at Monroe. Their eyes met across the sunlit field. Hers shimmered with something he knew too well, suppressed panic. Then, in a motion so subtle it could have been mistaken for brushing hair from her face, she made it. The signal, a closed fist, an open hand, the press against her opposite palm, the international child distress signal, a silent plea for help, taught in schools, recognized by soldiers, law enforcement, and child advocates alike. Monroe's pulse slammed into gear. His body remembered battle, his mind calculated risks. Breaking rank could cost him everything, commendations, command, even his career. But to do nothing? He saw his daughters, Madison and Joelle, saw their bright eyes, their trust in him to keep the world safe. And suddenly there were no more decisions to make. There was only one choice. As the man gripped the girl tighter and turned toward the gate, Monroe stepped forward. One echoing footfall shattered centuries of protocol. Gasps rose from the crowd. Cameras turned. The drill team froze mid-rifle toss. And the Marine, father, soldier, guardian, raised his voice, calm and thunderous. "Sir, stop. Let her go." The crowd hushed as Staff Sergeant James Monroe stepped forward, each bootfall deliberate, cutting through the sacred choreography of Echo Company's drill. Gasps rippled across the parade grounds like a dropped stone in still water. Cameras turned, phones lifted. The spell of ceremony shattered. The man in the polo shirt froze for half a beat, his polished facade flickering. Then he turned slowly, tightening his grip on the girl's wrist as if to anchor himself in control. "She's my niece," he said smoothly, the words honeyed but brittle. "We're just leaving, isn't that right, Emily?" The girl said nothing. Her lips trembled. Her eyes locked on Monroe's, pleading, terrified, silent. Monroe's voice rang out again, calm but unyielding. "Sir, step away from the child." Now the man's smile cracked. "This is outrageous. You're breaking protocol, Marine. I'll have your rank for this." Behind Monroe, the drill team remained frozen in place, rifles at shoulder, muscles tense. The platoon commander made no move to intervene. Only the commanding officer, standing near the reviewing stand, began speaking urgently into his radio. The man's eyes flicked across the courtyard, calculating. Monroe saw it instantly. the mental tallying of exits, obstacles, witnesses. It was the same look he'd seen on insurgents moments before they ran or pulled a trigger. Predator instinct, desperation in disguise. "I asked you a question, Marine," the man said, stepping closer, dragging the girl partially behind him. "Are you really willing to throw away your career over some confused little girl?" Monroe's jaw tightened. "She's not confused. She made the signal. She was brushing hair from her face. Then why is your grip bruising her arm?" Monroe countered. That struck. The man's face hardened, the mask slipping further. "You don't know what you're getting into," he hissed. A nearby mother holding a toddler spoke up. "She's been quiet this whole time. I tried to talk to her earlier, she just looked scared." An elderly man added, "I saw bruises when he lifted her. That girl's not okay." As the murmurs swelled, Marine security personnel began approaching from the edges, cutting off escape. The girl's eyes darted, her breathing shallow. The man's grip became a vice. Monroe stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Let her go. You can still walk away without making this worse." But the man snarled, "You're making a mistake. You Marines think your uniform gives you authority over everything. It doesn't." Monroe's eyes never left the girl. "Young lady," he said softly, kneeling to her level, "I saw your signal. I know what it means. You don't have to be afraid anymore." The man snapped, "Emily, tell this Marine I'm your uncle." She said nothing. Monroe gently extended a hand. "Is your name Emily?" he asked. "You don't have to speak if you're scared. Just nod yes or no." The girl looked at him, then at the man, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, shook her head. The air left the courtyard. The man turned furious. "She's lying. She's scared. That's all. She's confused." More guards closed in. A security sergeant stepped beside Monroe. "We've got reports from the front gate. No Emily listed on any tour manifest. No emergency contacts matching this man's ID." Monroe said, "Check the child's backpack." The man spun. "It's hers." Too late. The young female Marine gently turned the tag hanging off the girl's small pink bag. The name was written in child's handwriting, Lily Bennett, grade 3, Brookfield Elementary. The crowd gasped. A woman's voice cut through the rising tension. "Oh my God, that's the girl. That's Lily Bennett. She's been missing for weeks. I saw her on the news." The man's face twisted, rage now fully unleashed. He made one last move, yanking Lily hard toward the gate. But Monroe had already closed the distance. No drawn weapon. No raised fist, just speed, control, and the quiet resolve of a man who had spent his life protecting others. He stepped between them like a wall of iron and thundered, "That's enough." The man lunged, but Monroe intercepted him with practiced precision, pinning the man's arm behind his back in a controlled restraint. Within seconds, security had swarmed, dragging the suspect away as he shouted obscenities and threats that fell flat against the silence of a stunned audience. Lily stood trembling, not moving. Monroe turned to her, knelt, and spoke gently. "You're safe now, Lily. You did everything right." Tears welled in her eyes, and then for the first time that day she nodded, just once, and collapsed into his arms. The crowd, the Marines, the silence, all held that moment as sacred. Honor had not come from ceremony that day, but from courage, and one man's refusal to look away. Sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder as a squad car approached the gates of Camp Resolute. Military police cleared a path through the growing crowd. But James Monroe wasn't thinking about procedures anymore. He was thinking about Lily. The little girl clung to his sleeve like a lifeline, her knuckles white, her body trembling under the weight of adrenaline and fear. She hadn't spoken since whispering her name, but her silence said enough. Every instinct honed through war, fatherhood, and years of training told him this wasn't just a one-time incident. This man had been doing this for a long time, and she was likely not the only one. A young female Marine, Corporal Diaz, stood by with her arms gently around Lily's shoulders, speaking to her in soft tones, trying to ground her in safety. Meanwhile, Monroe paced a short distance away, eyeing the man, Daniel Harwick, if the forged ID was to be believed, now seated on the ground, restrained, spitting venom through clenched teeth. "You don't know what you've done," Harwick growled. "You've just destroyed your own career for a fairy tale." Monroe didn't flinch. Better to lose a stripe than let a predator walk. Harwick smirked. "You think they'll thank you? You embarrassed the Corps. You broke formation. There are consequences for that." Monroe stared at him, unmoved. There are also consequences for monsters. A senior officer, Lieutenant Colonel Hartley, approached, silver oak leaves glinting in the sunlight. His expression was unreadable. "Monroe," he said quietly, motioning him to the side. "Walk with me." They moved a few paces from the onlookers. Hartley's voice was low, measured. "You understand the gravity of what you did?" "Yes, sir." "You abandoned ceremonial post without direct command." "Yes, sir." "You disrupted a nationally televised event." "Yes, sir." "You also may have just saved a child's life." He turned to face Monroe. "Is that true?" Monroe's throat tightened. "I believe so, sir. I saw the signal, the bruises, the behavior. I couldn't ignore it." Hartley studied him for a moment longer, then gave a slow nod. "MPs are running background now. Nothing about this guy checks out. No confirmed relation to the girl, no records, no permission slips. He doesn't even have a registered vehicle on base." "So what happens now?" Monroe asked. Hartley looked toward the little girl who now sat with Corporal Diaz and a female MP, sipping water from a paper cup. "Now we protect the child. And then we deal with you." Monroe met his eyes without hesitation. "If that's the cost, I accept it." Hartley let out a faint breath. "Good, because not all costs are measured in rank." He turned away and addressed the MPs. "Assemble a trauma counselor. Notify local police. We may have a kidnapping ring. Secure the suspect until federal authorities arrive." Meanwhile, a reporter had slipped past the cordon and was speaking rapidly into her phone, broadcasting the moment to a growing online audience. "The U.S. Marine broke ceremonial formation today at Camp Resolute to intervene in what authorities now suspect was an attempted abduction. The girl, identified as Lily Bennett, was reported missing from a school in California nearly 4 weeks ago." The word struck Monroe like a punch to the chest. 4 weeks. That meant every day this girl had spent living in fear, clinging to hope that someone, anyone, would see her. And it had come down to one moment. One signal. One Marine who refused to remain still. Monroe stepped toward Lily. "Lily," he said softly. She looked up at him. "The police are coming. Real ones. They'll help get you home." "Will he come back?" she asked, voice so small it nearly disappeared in the desert air. "No," Monroe said, kneeling. "He won't." Her eyes welled again. "How do you know?" He didn't hesitate. "Because he messed with the wrong family." She blinked. "Are you my family?" Monroe's voice caught. He forced a smile. "Right now? Yeah, I think I am." The moment hung in the heat, but it felt like something had broken open. Not just the tension, not just the fear, but the possibility of healing. And even as the world swirled around them, cameras flashing, officers shouting, gates swinging open to let in law enforcement, it was quiet in that small circle. Quiet and safe. The kind of quiet only earned when someone chooses to do the hard thing. The right thing. The thing no one else will. Even if it means standing alone. The afternoon light was changing. The crisp discipline of the parade grounds had been replaced with a hum of tension. Tourists were ushered away. The last remnants of ceremony were packed up. But Camp Resolute was no longer hosting a showcase of tradition. It had become a battlefield of truth, and at the center of it stood Staff Sergeant James Monroe. He stood beneath the rust-colored flagpole, his dress blues now marked with desert dust and sweat. Not a single medal had shifted from its place, but inside something had changed. He'd broken protocol. He'd shattered centuries-old expectations. And now, he waited. Monroe's commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Hartley, stepped away from the secure tent where Daniel Harwick, now confirmed to be using an alias, was being interrogated by military police and local law enforcement. Hartley's face was harder now, tighter. "Monroe," he said, beckoning him over. "We need to talk. Privately." They walked to the edge of the drill field, near a shaded maintenance structure away from curious eyes and microphones. Hartley crossed his arms. Federal authorities just confirmed it. He began. "That girl, Lily Bennett, was abducted from a school district in Northern California. She's been missing for 26 days. Her parents, they thought she was dead." Monroe exhaled slowly like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Hartley continued. "You saw something no one else did. The signal, the bruises, the way she flinched. You risked everything, and you were right." "But?" Monroe asked, voice low. "There's always a but," Hartley replied. "HQ's involved now. Public relations is scrambling. Some higher-ups are furious. You went off-script during a nationally broadcast event. Some think it sets a dangerous precedent." I know what I did. I'm not sure they care why you did it. Monroe nodded. I'd do it again. Hartley didn't respond at first. He looked away across the base where the wind was picking up faint red dust in lazy spirals. I know you would, he said finally. That's why I fought for you to be part of this corps in the first place. Before Monroe could reply, an urgent call came from the tent. Sir, one of the military police officers called. You're going to want to hear this. Hartley and Monroe exchanged glances and walked quickly to the tent. Inside, Daniel Harwick sat cuffed to a steel chair, but the smugness was gone. His shirt was rumpled, his hair clung to his temples with sweat. Yet there was a glint in his eyes, one of contempt. He looked up as Monroe entered. Well, Harwick said, the hero returns. I'm not here for applause, Monroe replied evenly. Harwick leaned forward, voice like venom. You really don't understand, do you? You think you saved that girl? You barely scratched the surface. What are you talking about? I'm talking about people, Harwick hissed. Powerful people. You think I just stumbled across Lily by accident? You think I was acting alone? You Marines, you live in a world of orders and honor and simplicity. But the real world is a marketplace. Monroe's jaw clenched. You should have stayed in formation, Harwick said coldly. That little girl wasn't yours to take back. At that, Monroe stepped forward, locking eyes with him. You're right, she wasn't mine. But she's not yours either, she belongs to herself, and now, she's free. Before Harwick could reply, 2 federal agents entered the tent. Step back, Sergeant, one of them said, flashing a badge. We'll take it from here. As they read Harwick his rights, Monroe stepped outside again, blinking into the now golden light. And then he heard it. A voice, small but firm. Staff Sergeant Monroe? He turned. It was Lily, still wrapped in a soft military-issue blanket, still pale but standing taller now. Next to her was her mother, who had arrived moments earlier by helicopter, her eyes swollen, her hands shaking as they held her daughter's. Monroe knelt to her level. I didn't know who else would come, Lily said, but I hoped someone would see me. He smiled. You didn't need hope, you had courage. Her eyes filled again. You saw me. I saw you because you had the strength to ask for help, he replied. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. Lily's mother knelt down too. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You already did, Monroe said, looking at Lily. But before they could speak again, Monroe heard footsteps behind him. Colonel Hartley had returned, this time with someone Monroe hadn't seen before, a man in a dark suit with a Defense Department ID clipped to his coat. The man stepped forward. Staff Sergeant James Monroe? Yes, sir. I'm with the Secretary's office. We've reviewed the footage, the incident, your record, what you did today. He paused, seeming to weigh the words. It's under review. There are questions, but there's also respect. Monroe remained silent. You broke formation, but you didn't break the core, the man said. You reminded people what the uniform stands for. With that, the man turned and left, leaving Hartley and Monroe standing in the orange-tinged silence of twilight. Hartley sighed. Hell of a day. Feels like a war zone, Monroe said softly. Hartley chuckled. Sometimes the battlefield's made of sand, sometimes it's marble and protocol. He paused, then added, What you did out there, it'll be talked about for years. Monroe looked back toward Lily and her mother, still kneeling in quiet reunion. I don't care if they talk, he said. I care that she's alive. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the desert ridgeline and the base grew quiet, Monroe found himself back at his barracks, seated on his cot, dress blues still folded neatly beside him. A photo of his 2 daughters sat on the nightstand. He picked it up and stared at their smiles. Then he pulled out a notepad and began writing. A letter not for promotion, not for defense, but for his daughters. Dear Madison and Joelle, today I broke a rule. A big one, the kind they say you can't come back from. But I did it for someone who couldn't speak, someone who needed help, and who found the courage to ask. I want you to know that your father didn't freeze. He didn't look away, and that sometimes, real honor doesn't come from standing still. Sometimes it comes from stepping forward. Love, Dad. He folded the letter and placed it gently inside the photo frame. Somewhere in the distance, a bugle sounded retreat, the final call of day's end. And as the notes echoed across Camp Resolute, Monroe sat in the fading light, not a man punished for breaking the line, but remembered for drawing one. Between fear and hope, between silence and courage, between a child and her freedom. 2 weeks later, Camp Resolute returned to its usual rhythm. Dusty drills at dawn, the rhythmic cadence of boots on stone, rifles spinning under the sun. The viral moment had faded from the headlines, replaced by newer stories. But inside the base, something had changed. The Marines of Echo Company stood taller now. They'd seen what honor looked like when it stepped out of formation. Inside the base chapel, soft light filtered through narrow windows as Staff Sergeant James Monroe sat in the back pew, alone. The silence was heavy, not oppressive, but reverent. In his hand was a small, sealed envelope. On the front, a child's careful handwriting. To Mr. Monroe? From Lily. He hadn't opened it yet. A few days earlier, Lily and her mother had returned to California, escorted by agents and trauma counselors. But not before she handed him that envelope, hugged him once, and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." Now, under the quiet watch of stained glass, Monroe carefully unfolded the note. "Dear Mr. Monroe, I used to think grown-ups didn't notice. I thought maybe I'd never be seen again. But you saw me. When I made the hand signal, I wasn't sure it would work. We learned it once at school, but I thought people forgot. You didn't forget. I don't know if you're a hero, but my mom says heroes don't always wear capes. I think maybe they wear those shiny shoes and the blue suit like you. I hope your daughters know they have the bravest dad in the world. Love, Lily Monroe." Read it twice, then again, and something inside him finally gave way. Not tears, but stillness. A full-circle silence, like the final note of a song long held in the chest. Behind him, footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. It was Colonel Hartley. "You're being reassigned," the colonel said, sitting beside him. Monroe raised an eyebrow. "Temporary duty," Hartley clarified. "Washington, congressional hearing." "Hearing? Turns out your little stunt didn't just stir up internal brass. It reached Capitol Hill. They want to know why a child had to rely on a ceremonial Marine to be rescued. Why the signal worked, but the system didn't. And most of all, they want you to explain it." Monroe looked down at Lily's letter. "I'm not a politician." "No," Hartley said. "You're something better. You're proof that training isn't just muscle memory, it's moral instinct. You acted when others froze. They want to hear what that feels like from someone who stood still and then chose to move." Monroe took a long breath. "And after that?" Hartley smiled. "That's up to you. But between us, Echo Company would welcome you back." They sat there a moment longer in silence. Outside, the American flag snapped crisply in the desert wind. As Monroe exited the chapel, he folded Lily's letter and placed it carefully inside his uniform breast pocket. Over his heart, a convoy waited near the base entrance, ready to take him to the airfield. Before stepping in, he looked one last time at the drill field. The same stone, the same formation lines, the same sunlit parade ground where everything had changed. A place where he had broken centuries of silence for the voice of one child. He stepped into the vehicle. He wasn't just going to Washington, he was carrying a story. And in doing so, becoming something far greater than a Marine in formation. He was becoming a symbol of what it means to step forward when silence is no longer an option. If this story moved you, share it. Let acts of courage never go unnoticed. Let a single signal be the reason another life is saved. And let honor, loyalty, and compassion ripple through our communities. Don't forget to like this video if you believe this story deserves to be seen. Leave a comment below. Have you ever noticed someone in need when no one else did? What did you do? And make sure to subscribe for more true stories where courage breaks silence and duty becomes humanity. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video, where ordinary people do extraordinary things.